want to see a COVID-19 vaccine, don't we? And there are hopes that one could be available as early as Christmas. And scientists say that they hope it would have a significant impact on hospital admissions and deaths.
But is a vaccine the silver bullet, and will it allow life to go back to normal? Joining us now is Senior Clinical Lecturer and Expert in Communicable Disease Control at the University of Exeter, Dr. Bharat Pankania, and Vicar of South Brent and former Deputy Chief Medical Officer for England. Good morning to you, Reverend Professor Gina Radford. Also, we have Tim Eason, who is volunteering in the Novavax COVID-19 vaccine trial. And Tim, you're due to have your first vaccine tomorrow. I mean, that in itself must be quite an exciting thing for you. Why did you volunteer? I mean, it's an American company, isn't it? I think they're sort of doing trials in this country. Just tell us about why you got involved and why you're passionate about being in it.
Well, I think the only way we're going to beat this virus is through a vaccine. There are very few viruses which are actually cured. So if you think about things like polio, smallpox, measles, mumps, rubella, the reason they're not rife in the population is because of vaccines. And, the herd immunity argument really doesn't stand up, because so far only 8% of British people have been immunised, infected. And even if that gives them immunity, you need about 90% before you get what they call herd immunity. So it's taken 8 months to get 8%. And I don't think I want to go through another 82 months of what we've been going through. So, I'm very, very keen to help in any way that I can to get a vaccine out there.
So you feel positive. Are you nervous at all, by the way? Because, you are part of a trial. Are there any nerves, or do you feel so positive about what a vaccine can do, you just are going to go for it?
I'm just going to go for it because the trial, actually, as it happens, the trial I'm going to is a phase 3 trial, which means that the phase 1 and 2 check the safety and the possible efficacy, and the phase 3 trial then looks at, does it actually work in a population? So I have no concerns at all about safety now.
Well, very good. And Dr. Bharat Pankania, you're listening to that. I mean, we need people like Tim to do this, and he's embracing it, and you can see why, and we all want a vaccine to be developed. Are we in danger, though, of seeing it as the silver bullet to answer all problems and life can get back to normal? Do you have concerns that that's how we're viewing it?
Yes, good morning. I would really like the vaccine somewhere on our planet to work. Of course I would, but we need to be measured and be very cautious. Therefore, it is not a silver bullet. What will help is all range of measures and interventions, from vaccines to medications to simple infection control. And with respect to the vaccines, what we need to be also aware of is that we need to know that it has proper efficacy and proper immunity in the target group that we wish to protect. So elderly people, people with immune suppressive illnesses, etc., often don't mount a good immune response. So what we've got to be careful is, when we give this selected vaccine, does it work? Does it work long enough to protect them? Will we have to give them, for example, boosters, etc.? Having said all that, of course, I'm very positive, but it's not something that's going to happen tomorrow or in the next 3 months. It slowly does it, and we mustn't raise false hopes.
I mean, is it a false hope, Gina, to say that, to think about next summer? We've sort of slightly given up on Christmas, although Andrew Piers was saying don't give up just yet. But, should we have hope? I mean, we all need hope. That's the issue. People have given up their holidays this year. Lots of people have obviously been poorly with it. And you just think that, gosh, OK, if I can get my head round, maybe Easter next year or maybe summer next year, we can actually start feeling normal again. Or is that actually just giving ourselves false hope?
I think you're right. We all need hope at the moment, don't we? Because it's been a pretty grim few months. The key is not to make sure that is not unrealistic hope. So make sure the timescales are realistic. And I think summer next year is a more realistic timescale. From what's being said, it looks as if we may have vaccine available at the very end of this year that could be given to selected groups of people, such as healthcare workers, and perhaps even begin to vaccinate the elderly. But that's going to take a long time to work through the whole population. And so, realistically, in terms of a vaccine that's going to have a population-wide impact, I think this is going to be a while yet.
And it's interesting, isn't it? Because we've seen test and trace sort of have a very, very rocky path. And I think faith in whether the government or the Department of Health can actually organise distributing a vaccine is actually probably quite low.
I think you're right. And that's the one reason I think we need to be careful about not raising false hope. I always say it's better to promise little and then over-deliver, because people will go with you on that. And they are feeling a little bit cynical about some of these bold headlines. It's much better that people, I think, at the moment are cautious, but positive and optimistic, but in a measured way. And then I think people will have more trust. And that's really important at the moment.
That's the thing, Tim, isn't it? I mean, I know you're not a medical person, but I know you've found out a lot about this. The vaccines generally, even the best vaccine in the world for any disease is only usually 50 to 70% effective, in the sense that there'll always be some people that it doesn't work for. There'll always be some people that still get sick. There's always issues, and you just have to manage that as well. Why do you believe so strongly that it's the answer? Not just because you're taking part in the trial, but I know it's something you believe in anyway.
Well, yes. I mean, I believe in it because it's really our best hope at the moment. There are an awful lot of people suffering terribly with this disease right around the world, as they used to, as I said before, with smallpox and polio. I remember when I was a child, children going around on crutches because they were permanently disabled by polio. And now you never see a polio victim because of the vaccine. So even if we have to have it every year, like a flu vaccine, or even 6 months, if it stops the pandemic and we can all get back to being normal, let's do it.
Dr. Pankier, there are 6 different separate vaccines being trialled in the UK. Obviously, it's very complicated for most people to get their head around sort of the details of all of them. But just in layman's terms, do you have your hopes on a particular one? And because the UK has, quite rightly bought up lots of stocks of all 6 of them, just in case one of them comes to the finish line. Which one is your hope with?
They're all good in their own ways, but what is very good to know is that the manufacturers have looked at each and every weakness of the virus and then targeted a vaccine to attack the virus's weakness. That's the best way to describe it to our viewers and listeners. So we have vaccines which are carried by a virus to the body, and then the body makes the proteins, and then you get immunity by the body recognizing the proteins that your body made. And then there is other vaccines where you give them a attenuated or a killed vaccine, meaning the virus is very low in terms of longevity life-wise, and it is also killed. And then there's the other one, which I quite like, really, which is on the base of the influenza vaccine, which is killed bits and pieces of the virus. In other words, when I need to sell it to members of the public, I say to them, this vaccine cannot give you the coronavirus because it's bits and pieces of protein. It's not even a live or an attenuated vaccine.
Which a lot of people would take comfort in, wouldn't they? Because I think there's still some fear about that. Gina, if we could ask you as well, you're a former Deputy Chief Medical Officer. I suppose critical to this is how the vaccine's rolled out as well. Even when we've got it, do you have a plan in mind that you'd like to see who gets it first, and a sense of how quickly we could all get it?
Well, you're absolutely right. There's a huge logistics challenge about administering the vaccine, even if we do have it. First, we've got to manufacture enough, and then we've actually got to get it into people. So firstly, I know the government are training a raft of people to administer the vaccine. And they are going beyond the usual people, for example, who give flu vaccine, way beyond that. But then, of course, we've got to prioritise, because we're not going to have enough vaccine initially for absolutely everyone, nor are we going to have the delivery mechanisms. So the sorts of priority groups are clearly going to be healthcare workers, because they are the ones that are coming up against this virus as part of their work, and we need healthcare workers to be able to support the NHS. But then we need to be looking at those who are most vulnerable. And from our evidence so far, that's clearly those in our older age groups and those with underlying health conditions. So my understanding is the most obvious way is to prioritise based on that sort of risk stratification. Who's most at risk? Who do we most need to protect? And then clearly work that through the population as and when logistically we can do that.